For generations, the Christian text has been taught primarily as a book of morality. Under this framework, the religion is an exercise in sin management. The central directives are avoiding bad behavior, maintaining personal piety, and ensuring a favorable destination after death. This interpretation contains biblical elements, but focusing exclusively on behavioral management can overlook the broader scope of the text. By examining what this common framework leaves out, we can see how the emphasis of the scriptures begins to change. An ancient interpretive pattern reads the text differently. This perspective views the scriptures as a revelation of God's authorized order, a structural blueprint of reality, and humanity's precise place within it. We can map the divergence between these two ideas using this comparative matrix. On the left is the moral framework, defined by a judicial scale. On the right is the authorized order, defined by a structural blueprint. This ancient reading alters the definitions of Genesis, sin, Christ, and salvation. Adopting the ancient framework changes the function of the Christian religion. It moves from a system of legal pardon to a system of structural restoration. The divergence between these two paradigms begins with their respective readings of Genesis 1. Looking at the left column, the modern framework views Genesis as the story of material creation. Mankind is presented as a biological human accountable to a static rulebook. The ancient view defines man as a vessel designed to carry and embody a divine blueprint. In this model, Genesis is the establishment of lawful order, where God names, arranges, and authorizes reality. These opposing origins produce two different definitions of sin. The modern view defines sin as committing a bad action, the breaking of a command. The ancient view identifies sin as a corrupted identity. It is the moment humanity attempted to derive value and validation from unauthorized sources outside the divine grid. Immoral actions are the fruit of this fracture. The root issue is the misalignment with the authorized order of life. Returning to our matrix, the modern column interprets the fall as a legal violation. A rule was broken and divine punishment followed. The ancient reading identifies the fall as an existential dislocation. Man remained in the same physical geography, but lost alignment with the authorized construct. Mankind became an immigrant. He inhabited God's physical world while operating under a foreign internal construct and a false title. A purely legal framework cannot solve an existential dislocation. If the problem is a corrupted internal order, adjusting external behavior will not repair the underlying nature. Because they diagnose the problem differently, the two paradigms point toward different goals for the Christian narrative. In the left column, salvation functions as an evacuation. Earth is a waiting room to reach heaven after death. In the right column, heaven is the authorized construct of God's order. Salvation is the process of this construct being restored to man on earth. The vector of salvation is downward integration. It is reinstatement into the original blueprint. This determines the function of Christ. The left column presents Jesus solving a courtroom problem. Humanity owed a legal debt, and Christ arrived to pay the penalty. The ancient view sees Christ solving a creation problem. He introduces an uncorrupted human blueprint into the physical world, which overwrites the fractured human grid. He acts as the true man. He demonstrates authorized humanity by functioning entirely from divine union rather than self-validation. At the cross, he takes on the corrupt order that mankind embraced. He allows that unauthorized nature to express itself fully, bringing it to termination and judgment in his death. The resurrection marks the emergence of restored humanity. The legitimate title of mankind is reclaimed. Salvation, therefore, includes an immediate release from false identities. It separates a person from definitions rooted in fear, approval, and performance. It provides re-entry into the authorized construct of God, restoring the individual to their rightful function. Treating Jesus strictly as a legal substitute narrows his mission. When the work is limited to forgiveness alone, the believer is often left without a path to structural transformation. These frameworks dictate how a believer interacts with physical corruption and the daily frictions of life. The modern framework teaches the acceptance of sickness, corruption, and death. They are treated as natural conditions to be endured until reaching heaven. The ancient view identifies sickness and death as intrusions. They are not native to God's authorized construct, but belong to the disordered existence that followed the fall. Christ's resurrection disrupts that disordered existence. Believers are called to recognize that the legitimate order of life has been reestablished. We see this reflected in our matrix under discipleship. The modern column defines growth as religious devotion, church participation, and striving for moral improvement. The ancient column defines discipleship as mind renewal, a process of reinstatement into divine order. Mind renewal is the deliberate replacement of unauthorized definitions of reality with divine ones. It is learning to function from the nature of the resurrected Christ. Christianity is not about surviving a broken world through willpower. It is the active demonstration of a restored life through a structurally renewed mind. The gap between these two models is the distance from religion to restoration. The moral framework asks how a person can stay acceptable to God. The ancient framework asks how a person can be fully restored to their legitimate identity. This alters daily practice. The objective shifts from managing sin to manifesting the restored life of the age to come. A framework that offers forgiveness without restoration can leave believers feeling persistent emptiness. The coping mechanisms of modern religious culture are often insufficient for the actual magnitude of what Christ recovered. The biblical text tracks a narrative that spans the structural alignment of the cosmos. It maps humanity's departure into illegitimate identity and its return from spiritual immigration back into union with heaven's order. Grasping this ancient order is how an individual stops living as an immigrant in God's universe and finally possesses the identity that heaven authorizes.